Welcome, everybody. We'll call the Tuesday, June 20th, 2017 meeting of the Everett Planning Commission to order, starting with the roll call, please.
Chair Holland?
Here.
Commissioner Tisdale?
Here.
Commissioner Jordison?
Here.
Commissioner Lavra? Commissioner Lark?
Here.
We have 3 agenda items tonight, quite a few people in here. If you plan on addressing the Planning Commission on any of the items, items 1, 2, or 3, please fill out the speaker sign-in sheets and make sure we get a copy of those. But first item of business is we have 2 sets of minutes to the Planning Commission to review. The first one is the April 18th, 2017 minutes. Has the commission had an opportunity to review, and if so, any comments, corrections, or motions? Let the record state that Commissioner Dunn is now present. Thank you.
A motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Commissioner Dunn?
Abstain.
Commissioner Lark?
Abstain.
Commissioner Lavra? Commissioner Jordison? Commissioner Tisdale?
Yes.
Chair Holland?
Yes. The second is the May 2nd, 2017 minutes. Has the commission had an opportunity to review those? And if so, any comments, corrections, or motions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, if no, call for the vote, please.
Abstain.
Commissioner Lark?
Yes.
Commissioner Lavra?
Abstain.
Commissioner Jordison? Yes. Commissioner Tisdale?
Yes.
Chair Holland?
Yes. Any reports from the planning commissioners? Commissioner Dunn, any?
I attended the Workers' Memorial on Memorial Day, since we haven't met in so long, honoring the memory of workers who died due to work-related injuries. So it was important to understand that and attend.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Lark?
I attended a meeting of the Everett Station District Alliance. It became a nonprofit. It would authorize itself to become a nonprofit. It's moving along, bringing in stakeholders, having a lot of great conversation around how we could revitalize the area, the neighborhood around the Everett Station. Just very exciting stuff.
Commissioner Lark? Okay.
No report.
I attended that same meeting.
Okay, great. No report from me. Any staff comments?
Yes, Alan Giffen, Planning Director. Our next regularly scheduled meeting would normally fall on the first Tuesday in July, which will be the 4th, so no meeting tonight, or that night, I should say. And next meeting tentatively will be on July 18th. We do not have a subject yet, but I'm sure we can materialize something between now and then. And that's it.
Thank you. Well, this is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the Planning Commission on items that are not on the agenda tonight. If so, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. And seeing none, it looks like we're on to item number 1, which is the 6-year tip.
Richard Terry, Public Works Department. The 6-year TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, is an annual process. It's a rolling 6-year calendar of projects. It's a list of projects that is not financially constrained. The purpose of it is to authorize for eventual council approval, which authorizes staff to seek funding for any of the phases of any of the projects. Some of the projects are not even City of Everett projects that we would do. They're projects that we would suggest to the state, the federal government, and also could be port projects or our sound transit projects that we support that are part of the list. It's financially unconstrained. If you totaled up all the numbers, you're just shy of $5 billion on this list. And so of that, about $450 million are actually within the city or local projects. And they're projects that have been built off the list that's in the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. The changes this year are 4. One is the Edgewater Creek Bridge, which is a bridge just before you leave Everett going into Mukilteo. It's a bridge that we're seeking funding for from the state to do some repairs and work through a process with it. Also, in conjunction with that, there's a couple of other bridges along that corridor that no one knows are really bridges. And so we're trying to convince the state and talk about that as a corridor with the state. So that project is something that we're working on getting state funding for. The other two new transit projects are Waterfront Riverfront Connector Service, which are electric buses, and 80-stall park and ride, which is by Everett Station. Both of those are funded. They're in the state transportation budget. And the fourth one is a Port Marine Industrial Project list. It's the SR 529 West Marine View Drive bulkhead rehabilitation, and the port is seeking funding for that from various sources that the port can access. So again, this is an unconstrained list. It just authorizes staff to go forth and seek funding, and I can answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the Planning Commission?
I did have a question about the 36th Street pedestrian crossing of the railroad tracks. I don't think that was in the comprehensive plan, but it's on this list, or it's in one or the other. Anyway, I was curious about it. I think it's in this list, but it wasn't in the comprehensive plan, and I was just curious about it.
Yeah, the 36th Street pedestrian bridge is a project that works in conjunction with, or worked in conjunction with, the Riverfront project, and I believe it's probably been on the list for about 15 years. It's just a connection point to go to get across the railroad tracks, basically. And so that project has, at different times, had some design funding, but it hasn't had any construction funding, as the different plans have changed down at the riverfront. And so it's really just there as a placeholder for if that is something that the city desires to do as the construction evolves or
Thank
the
you.
project evolves.
Commissioner Dunn?
Are there any projects related to rail safety, particularly removing hazardous materials or impact zones?
None that are specific to that. There's a program for wherever we have what we call at-grade crossings, and so we try to improve those. Those are typically from the perspective of me and my group who seek funding. We typically look at that as where the pots of money are to do that are from freight funding pots. So there's a state freight mobility board, and then there are federal, now about to be federal mobility or federal freight dollars that will look at those corridors to try to separate truck traffic and car traffic, other modes from rail. We've used it in a couple places, but not recently. And so it's something that we move forward with.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. I was very interested and intrigued by the Interstate 5 100th Street HOV access undercrossing. Are you able to speak in a little more detail that project, or?
The project in itself is essentially, it's an underpass to I-5. It was envisioned as part of regional, the acronym is RTID, and I'm going to get close to what it actually means. But there was a state effort to sort of look at various kinds of ways to deal with HOV traffic. And so the project itself was an underpass that included transit access, similar to how transit comes off Broadway and comes up on the inside lanes, so it doesn't have to cross 4 lanes of traffic and slow everything down as it's trying to merge. That was a vision of that happening, as well as connecting the sort of Everett Mall area to the Silver Lake area more directly.
And out of curiosity, since it's HOV, which is bus, high occupancy vehicles, et cetera, is that connected at all to the park and ride down there as well? Or is it part of that plan, or is it not?
It's really a placeholder. It was done as part of if we could get the amount of funding that we would need to do that kind of project, or get the state to do it. And so a lot of these, like I said, they're financially unconstrained so that we can use them as people are thinking up or working through what regional solutions are. And that kind of evolves as we go. And so that one has, like some of these projects, it sort of gets a little life, and then everyone looks through and just did the big state package, the Connecting Washington, and priorities are different, and they chose to do other projects.
Oh, thank you very much.
Anything for Broadway pedestrian safety? I didn't see anything specific on the list, whether down by the college or up here by the transit so the folks can,
We have safety programs listed, but nothing specific to that as calling it a Broadway pedestrian safety project. There's pedestrian safety, there's sidewalk programs, there's ways to look at and do that, but that isn't specifically called out as a project. But if I needed to seek funding for it, typically how this process works with this list is I start with a program, and then as it gets closer to whether the city has, and the engineering and design gets more evolved, so there's more of a know what to call it, how to name it, how to move forward. It moves from a program to maybe a corridor, and then it may get real specific and be this bridge or this intersection or this segment from here to here. And right now, that would exist just in the programs.
thank you.
Any further questions? Great, thank you. I didn't have anyone sign up to speak on this item tonight, but if you'd like to, you're welcome to come forward now and state, oh, we got more sheets. Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we have a resolution before us tonight, Commissioners. It's Resolution 17-07 that staff is looking for action on.
Yes, I would move that we approve this resolution 1707 and with the change of the date of approval to the 20th.
Thank you.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay. Call for the vote.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Lark,
Yes.
Commissioner Lavra, Commissioner Jordison, Commissioner Tisdale,
Yes,
Chair Holland.
Yes. So on to item 2 tonight, which is the Everett Transit Long Range Plan.
Sabina Popa with Everett Transit. A few months ago, the commission expressed an interest in our project, which is the development of a 20-year long-range plan. The first one of its kind that we've taken on, and now I'm back to you. It's our outreach process right now, ending on Thursday, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to hear the information that we presented to the public during our visioning workshop, which was on June 8th, and present the information to anybody else who usually comes to these meetings that we perhaps haven't touched base with, and hopefully some of the people that are here today will take our survey and let us know what they think about transit as well. A little bit of about our project timeline. We are still very early on. If you look at Q2 on the slide, this is our vision, outreach, and values survey. We started the project back in January. And the goal of the project is to come back, first of all, go and reach out to the community and get feedback on what matters to Everett residents and people that come and work here as far as transit and how they use transit, how they would like us to function in the future and serve the community. Following this survey period, we will take the information along with the research that our consultants are putting together, and we'll come back in the fall with a set of 2 network options that then the public will be able to give us input on. So that will happen in the fall, and that should give us a roadmap for where we want to be in the future and work towards in 20 years. From there, in December, we'll have a draft long-range plan, and then a final one in the spring of 2018. And why we need a long-range plan? It is no news to you as Planning Commission that our population and jobs are growing, and we have to deal with emerging technologies that we have to decide on whether to tackle or whether to wait and see what we do. And we also have a regional transit network that is growing. Light rail will come in 20 years, and we have bus rapid transit provided by community transit. And we'd like to have a roadmap on how to integrate with that system once it's here. A little bit about how we're growing. We're going to be planning for a growth of up to 60% by 2035, keeping in mind that we might have up to 60,000 additional cars, a 5 to 10 minute increase in traffic, 46,000 new jobs, and 25,000 new homes to serve. The plan will be a 20-year plan. We'll establish a vision for our future and identify future transit service. And it'll also establish some milestones and service standards so that we know we can go back and gauge where we are in the process. We can plan for 60,000 more folks, but if they don't come as fast as we anticipate, then we should be able to know where we are and apply those service standards to modify our service accordingly. A little bit about Everett Transit. We offer local bus and paratransit services for City of Everett and Mukilteo and South Everett. And we support the city's goals for improving the quality of life for all residents. And we are one of the lowest fares providers in the region. So we provide about 2 million trips on 11 routes. That was in 2016. About 120,000 rides on paratransit service. And we move about 6,500 folks every day. About 4 million vehicle miles saved and 1 million car trips saved in Everett. So you may use us or not, but you definitely see the impact of our service in the community. At the same time, we are part of a regional transit network. The primary hub for all of those services is Everett Station, where we have Sound Transit Express Bus, Sound Transit Train, Community Transit, Skagit Transit, Island Transit, Amtrak, and Greyhound. We also work with the state agencies, Federal Transit Administration, Snohomish County Government, Puget Sound Regional Council in planning and different projects. So our considerations in planning, we will work with our regional providers to take a look at their plans and gauge where their service will be in 20 years. And then we will look at all of the plans that the region has put forth, Puget Sound Regional Council, Transportation 2040 Plan. The city's comprehensive plan has a transportation element that gives us the basics for where the city wants us to be in 20 years. So that's our guiding document. And some of the things that we are considering are alternative mobility options. Access to transit has been a conversation lately in terms of pedestrian and bicycle access to transportation hubs and to bus stops. Uber, Lyft are all providers that are now coming into play, and some agencies are considering contracting services with them for the last mile of service provided. So we've seen some pilot programs around the country regarding that. We want to gauge where our residents see that program. We also have autonomous technology in play and battery technology. We have electric buses coming as part of our fleet. And we'd like to gauge our residents to see what their thoughts are, where we should focus our services first in our research. Some of the things that we strive for is providing the best service possible within financial constraints. So part of the value survey that we have and we want people to fill out is asking folks to rank their priorities. Given a certain amount of money that we have available, what should we focus on? And some of those are coverage, which talks about how close the bus stops are from your origin and destination, frequency of service, span of service, which is how early and how late we operate, the service type. We have local, we have, which is typical of most of our service. We have commute service, which is peak hour only to certain high interest areas. And we also have BRT. We're partnering with Community Transit in providing Swift service to Everett residents. We're also wanting to know if the cost of our fare is important to our residents, affordability, also comfort and safety. So we're asking people to rank those priorities and let us know. So if we're looking at coverage, we're talking about how far apart the stops are. You can see Swift stops are much farther apart, and they provide a higher frequency of service. Sound Transit, much farther apart. Bus trips per hour. Right now, our highest frequency route is every 15 minutes. That would be 4 buses per hour. Swift has 12-minute frequency currently, and will have 10 minutes soon. And Sound Transit has 10-minute frequency at peak. Span of service is how early and how late. The red bar is weekday service. The gray is weekend service. As you can see, we are pretty comparable in our weekday service in terms of how early and how late we operate. But weekend, we have a shorter span of service currently. And this gives you an idea of how many buses we have in operation by time of day. At peak in the afternoon, that's where we have 33 buses operating out of 42 currently in our fleet. So the values that our residents are providing to us and the feedback will be used to create that roadmap for how we will serve Everett in the future, develop those service options that we can then come back in the fall and show, and then establish a set of service standards. Again, a little bit timeline. I've gone through that already. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have one question, and I'm sorry I don't know this, I'm letting my ignorance show, but is Everett Transit not on the ORCA card system yet?
Yes, we are.
Oh, you are?
We are
Okay.
part of ORCA. Yes.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Any other questions? Just one question. So I've gotten feedback from folks that ride CT from Marysville into Everett, and maybe this is incorrect, but the only stop that they have currently from coming from Marysville is just right about 7th Street in Broadway. Is that correct, or does it actually go further towards the college? I was told that there was a walking distance there that they had to go if they're coming in from Marysville, that they couldn't just get right off at the college. And
There's a stop at Tower Street that is right by the college.
Okay,
and
perfect.
both Community Transit, also Skagit and Island stop there.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any
And I
additional
should mention,
questions?
sorry,
Okay, go ahead.
all of the information is on our website, as well as the link to our survey. I brought some paper survey, which I'll be able to get and collect, and more brochures for more information.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Looks like we had one person sign up to speak on this item tonight. It's JT Dre.
Thank you, Commissioner Howland. I am afraid I'm going to have to read a little bit of this, and I would not be at all offended if you read the handout that I provided you with.
Mr. Dre, can you state your address for the record, please?
902 Wetmore. I would particularly direct your attention to the 2 items that I've highlighted on the front page there that talks about finances and technology. I am here from the TAC Committee, where I have 5 more meetings to go before I complete my 6 years of service. And I'm also the chair of the Transportation Committee of the 38th District Democrats, and I'm a dues-paying member of the SCCIT, which is the Snohomish County Citizens for Improved Transportation. I'm here to speak about Transportation Plan 2040 and how the 20-year plan of Everett Transit would fit into it. I am not certain if they're both mandated by the feds to provide such a plan update. I think they are, although this is the first time that I've ever heard it being done at Everett Transit. Before I start, I would like to thank Alan and David for the wonderful Metro Everett event that they put on a week ago Tuesday. It was the most well-attended one that I've been to, although I've only been to one other one. And It was very genuine, I thought, which meant a lot to me, and so I appreciated how that was done. It's pretty exciting to see what's going to happen in 20 years. I cross my fingers I'm around to see it. And likewise, I know you folks were not responsible for planning the marina, but I live fairly near there, and we're excited to see that develop as a sort of neighborhood-friendly option on the second go-around. So that turned out really, really well, I think. There's exciting things happening in transportation too, mass transit. And several of you know of my long interest in the topic, especially Everett Transit. This actually could be an opportune time to see things happen at Everett Transit as well. The stars seem to be aligned. Can you believe that Dave Somers is the chair of both the PSRC and Sound Transit at the same time? I don't know how many times that could happen in one person's lifetime, that a Snohomish County boy could be in charge of both of those things. I would also tell you about the historic shift that's going on from the internal combustion engine to electric vehicles, controlled by software and chips, essentially computers on wheels. It's happening this very minute. I can't stress enough how quickly this is happening, right before our very eyes. 44 corporations are at work on autonomous vehicles. They're the giants of industry, Apple and Alphabet, the Google parent who is hooking up with Uber apparently, Audi and BMW, Ford, GM, Tesla, Volvo, two big Chinese companies, I won't attempt to pronounce their names, Microsoft, SoftBank, Intel. It's really the heavy hitters. And the expectation is that the autonomous vehicles will first be on the streets in 2025, and they'll be there as Uber and Lyft hailing taxis, for lack of a better word. And the interesting thing, though, is Lyft and Uber are also working on a second generation of their product. And one of them is called Lyft Shuttle. I'll just give you a brief little blurb about it. Lyft Shuttle is the ride-hailing industry's latest product to mimic the fixed routes and flat fares of a city bus service. Fares for Lyft Shuttle are not affected by surge pricing. Uber and Lyft have been testing various fixed route products. And as Ms. Popa said, it's not uncommon these days to see Uber and Lyft in partnership with paratransit systems across the more serious transportation centers across the country for the first and last mile. And I also included a handout of something that I was kind of partial to, which is called Bridge, B-R-I-D-J. And unfortunately, they didn't make it, and they gave up the ghost in April. But I think the model is a good one, and the data analytics aspect of it is something that we're going to have at the WSU campus starting in the fall, actually. So maybe we could be in the forefront of a new industry that was related to transit. When we heard at the TAC committee that a 20-year plan was being undertaken, one of my compatriots who's not on the board, the TAC committee any longer, but who does own a traffic consulting business in Everett, asked what seemed to be the obvious question: will the merger of Everett Transit and community transit be on the table? I urged that the 20-year plan consider treating Everett Transit more like a business and less like a department of city government. And I also suggested that there be consideration given to hiring more professionals, by which I was thinking AICP after their name, and I know you people in planning know that, those initials, I'm pretty sure. The 20-year plan, if you examine it, is constructed to drive the participants to a survey online. And it's a very aspirational survey. There's basically no context whatsoever about where the last 100 years of Everett Transit has brought us to the current state of affairs. And I have to tell you, my strong intuition is, and I'm doing a little reading between the lines here, but that we'll learn when all this is over. Everett Transit is financially constrained, and although Everett Transit acknowledges that there is no technology, it's not something that they would be interested in undertaking. Net, 20 more years of the same. As I said at the beginning, I think this is an opportune time to do something different. What we've been doing is kind of dismal, to tell you the truth. I do not own a car. I do ride Everett Transit. If Everett Transit is going to move forward, then they have to embrace the future. And if any of you can advance that cause, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drew. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to address the Planning Commission on this topic? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Jim Staniford, 1508 Hewitt, Everett, Washington. I have a question for the presenter. Is on all that list, I have not heard anything about trolleys in the city of Everett, in the downtown core between east and west. So if the presenter could maybe answer that question.
Yes, sure, thank you. Sabrina?
Trolleys, they're not currently a mode that we are exploring simply because of its financial constraints of having a fixed guideways. We did have a study a few years back regarding riverfront to waterfront connector that was a fixed guideways, and that was one of the study areas. And at that time, it was determined that it is very expensive to provide. So we are opting to have that type of service that is more specialized by having the connector with electric buses. And that's part of the 3 expansion buses that were mentioned in the TIP that we're purchasing for that purpose. So not specifically, but any input we're happy to take, and our consultants are happy to look at.
Those 3 buses are already purchased,
They are funded. They haven't been purchased yet. We have,
going to service.
so we have 4 replacement buses that will be all electric, a contract with Proterra that we're working on, and we've added the 3 extra ones. The 3 expansion buses, I think it's 2019 that we're looking at getting.
And are those to service riverfront to waterfront?
Correct. That is for that route specifically.
Thank you.
Any other questions while you're here? Okay. Thank you for updating us, and I encourage everybody to go on to the Everett Transit website and take the survey. And was that Thursday that comments were due? Is that correct? Yeah, so before Thursday, please. Okay, on to our third agenda item, which is the opiate substitution treatment facility.
Good evening, Alan Giffen, Planning Director. Getting my PowerPoint going here in just a moment. Maybe? Ah. Okay. Tonight has been advertised as a public hearing for the Planning Commission to consider the code amendment that we've been talking about actually for over a year. It was initiated in, I believe it was April of 2016, and then it kind of sat on the back burner for a while until earlier this year, and We have had a couple of conversations about it, including a public workshop on May 2nd of this year. I'll talk a little bit about what the current code allows, and that is only one opiate substitution treatment facility is permitted under our current land use code. And that is only allowed in either E1 or C1 commercial zones located south of SR 526. And I will show you so you can see on the map where those zones are. This gray and the green shades are both the Evergreen Way zoning, E1 zoning. The green areas are the mixed-use overlays that are around the BRT stations on Evergreen Way. The blue is a C1 zone, and so in those commercial areas south of SR 526, which you see at the top of the screen here, is the only area of town where an opiate substitution treatment clinic would be permitted. Whoops, let me go back just a moment. This little star that you see down here is the location of the existing THS, Therapeutic Health Services Clinic at 100th Street and Evergreen Way. There's a little bit more land that wouldn't fit on the first map, and you can see again the THS clinic here at 100th and city limits down here at the intersection of Airport Road and Highway 99. These green and gray areas are the zones in which a clinic would be allowed. But again, we only allow one, so as long as there is one, then no other of these properties would be used for that use. A couple of things that we've been looking at in the code amendment. One would be a minor change in definition, and we talked about this at our May 2nd workshop. Just a slight change to make it read a little bit better. I won't read this for you, but the area that's highlighted in red would be where we are either making an addition or, in the case of one word, striking that. Proposed code amendment would also allow a second clinic to be cited. And where we've been talking about it in the previous workshops would be in the Broadway Mixed Used zoning located north of 24th Street, so just a little bit north of downtown on the Broadway corridor. And for discussion, the Planning Commission at the May 2nd workshop requested that staff bring back a option for the downtown area. And I'll show you the Broadway Mixed Use zoning on Broadway, which is the goldenrod color marked BMU, and you can see by this map, for reference, I've indicated where Everett Community College is, so that runs roughly from about, about 6th Street on the north down to about 24th Street, which I've marked on the segment of the map that is on the right-hand side of the screen. So that is the area we had been talking about previously and had been reviewed under the State Environmental Policy Act review the city conducted. And the B3 zone, which is the downtown zoning, is the hot pink color that you see on the map that runs from the east side of Broadway all the way over to Bond Street next to the railroad tracks. It includes almost all of the property between Everett Avenue on the north, Pacific Avenue on the south, and a little bit to the north and a little bit to the south along Colby and on Rucker. The area on the map to the right that is highlighted in the goldenrod color there are the areas that within the zoning code are designated as retail streets. And so if we were to consider adding the B3 zone to the area where a second opiate clinic would be allowed, our recommendation would be not to allow it on the ground floor of these designated retail streets. There are a number of other uses that the code prohibits within this area, but only on the ground floor of buildings. So if you had a multi-story building, some of these uses could, the prohibited uses and the code could go into a second floor or a basement of one of those buildings. But those are retail streets. The intent is to keep the retail frontage reserved for shopping and restaurant type uses. So this is something that, we had proposed as in response to the Commission's last public workshop. Now, we've received some correspondence and feedback since the Commission's last workshop. Probably the most significant piece is a letter that we received from the Downtown Everett Association that's in your packet. And the Downtown Everett Association had raised some concerns that this is something that's fairly lately been added to the public discussion, and that taking action to add, or take any action to add either downtown or Broadway as a zone for a second opiate clinic is a little bit premature until there's more public information and opportunity for public to weigh in, and particularly on the for the sake of the Downtown Everett Association within the B3 zoned area. And so they have asked for 90 days to allow for more public review and some study of the issue. And it's staff's opinion that based upon the things that they've asked, one was be to look at the impacts of opiate substitution treatment facilities on surrounding businesses and properties. The second would be to ask what is the distribution of these facilities throughout Snohomish County. And the third is to examine the role of social services within the downtown area. The first two items, or excuse me, the second item, the distribution throughout Snohomish County, is pretty easy to report. There's one clinic located up on Stillaguamish tribe property, and there's one also in the Canyon Park area of Bothell. And then the third in the county is the facility that I showed on the map a little earlier within the city of Everett. But examining the role of social services in general within the downtown is a bigger subject that would definitely take more than 90 days for us to complete. And it's our recommendation that that policy question would be folded into the Metro Everett plan process that we are conducting and looking at the greater downtown and Everett Station area. Now, as far as any action for tonight, the city staff and administration does recommend that you take public testimony, but that you not take any action tonight other than to, I guess, unofficial action would be to agree to continue the review of this so that we can conduct more public outreach and you can gather more information before making a decision on the code amendment. One of the things that we wanted to also do tonight was have Hill Kamen, our Public Health and Safety Director from the administration, come and talk about some other opiate treatment opportunities. We realize it's a serious problem in our community that THS has hit the maximum limit that they're allowed to serve. In their South Everett location, there's a waiting list, but by continuing the dialogue, we are also cognizant of the fact that there are people who are in need of the service. And so I'm going to ask Hill to come up here and make some comments about other opiate treatment opportunities, and then I'll be available for questions later. Thank you.
Good evening, Hill Kamen, Public Health and Safety Director. And I'm actually going in a moment to invite Jeff Ketchel, the Interim Health District Administrator, to talk about the efforts that are going on there, working with the city and the county to lead some county-wide efforts to address this epidemic. And I was here a couple of weeks ago and explained the work that the city's doing. We have a number of programs that are working to address this issue alongside the related issues of mental illness and homelessness. That would include our embedded social worker programs, our police-assisted addiction recovery initiative that sends people to long-term treatment, our partnerships with the jail in their effort to expand medication-assisted treatment in the jail and to expand diversion opportunities there. So those efforts at the city are underway every day. There's also our lawsuit against Purdue Pharmaceutical, which is one of our efforts to try and combat the epidemic. What I wanted to reiterate is that our work on this issue at the city grew out of the Streets Initiative Task Force, which was this partnership that brought together treatment providers, government, businesses, faith-based groups, and was a really comprehensive approach that had broad stakeholder input and broad consensus on what those solutions are. And at the time, the epidemic of opioids had not quite risen to public awareness in the way that it is today. And if you read back through those recommendations, there isn't as many that specifically address the issue of the opioid epidemic. It was there, but it wasn't quite at the surface the way it is today. And one of the benefits of that group was that it brought in that consensus and really explored the best ways to approach that. And so in addition to all the efforts that are underway, taking the time to bring together the community and get more input on that makes a lot of sense so that we can have a comprehensive approach and make sure that what we do is consistent with the other strategic planning goals of the city and also recognizes the need to address the epidemic right away. There's a lot of work going on. I'm going to invite Jeff Ketchel forward now, and he's going to walk through those efforts that are currently underway, just so that you know that our efforts to address this would not stop in any way if there's a period of planning for 6 months while we look for the best way to address the zoning of opioid replacement therapy.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Ketchel. I'm the interim administrator for the Snohomish Health District. Thanks for having me here tonight. The City of Everett, through the leadership of Mayor Stephenson and Hill Kamen, have done tremendous work in being at the forefront of this very complex issue like the opioid epidemic facing our community. They have stepped out in more ways than one, and the Snohomish Health District is proud of the partnership we have been cultivating with the city and our continued efforts to stop this crisis. We respect the voices of those concerned in our community over the siting of a second methadone clinic in our city. We almost must recognize the need to balance these concerns with the fact that the issue impacts just about every resident in Snohomish County, and it will take each of us playing a role to be able to collectively turn the tide. City officials do need to ensure the best location for such a site, taking into account how many clinics are needed in the county and the willingness of all to help find a solution. This takes time and collaboration on multiple fronts. However, just because the city may pause to review the siting doesn't mean that efforts to address this epidemic are stalling, quite the opposite. At the Snohomish Health District, we are working to reduce opioid usage and prevent overdose deaths through 3 main tools: assessment, outreach, and prevention. Through assessment, the Health District is measuring and understanding this epidemic. Examples include a new pilot partnership with Providence Hospital, where the emergency room is investigating, measuring, and conducting follow-up with every overdose that hits their emergency room. We also look at all sorts of data that come in, and I'm happy to report that amongst 12th graders throughout Snohomish County, the amount who have tried heroin dropped in 2014 of 5.7% to 2016 of 3.2%, a very significant drop. We're also working through outreach, and we're working on a public education and outreach campaign right now to educate the public and business owners what to do when they find a used needle, or what to do when they find somebody overdosed or passed out in their bathroom or other public space. And as well as participating with others on creating a unified opioid strategic plan for Everett and all of Snohomish County. And then lastly, through prevention, the Health District is working to roll out our new Safe and Secure Medicine Return Program, funded and operated by the pharmaceutical industry, which is set to begin in July this year. We're also supporting the local nonprofit needle exchange and conducting outreach to physicians, orthopedic surgeons, veterinarians, and dentists regarding treatment and prescribing issues. In each of these instances, the City of Everett plays a key role in our success. While we certainly need to increase access to treatment, we must continue to work together to look at shortening the line of people waiting to get treatment. Snohomish Health District looks forward to participating in discussions regarding this very complex issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to conclude with one last remark, and then we'd be available for questions if you have any. But the working group that Jeff mentioned is something that we're going to begin in the next month, and we're going to bring together a group of community experts on this topic and look at those people who need access to treatment, look at the resources that are available, see how we can look at those who need it and connect them with what's available, and where we can use existing resources to really make sure that everybody in our community can get the treatment that they need. So we're going to be really bringing everyone together in a very short order to do that.
Great. Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, one or two last comments before I encourage you to open it up for public testimony. I want to reiterate that tonight is not a hearing on any specific property. that would be a potential site for a methadone clinic. It's a public hearing on a code amendment that would open up a couple of areas, the Broadway corridor, potentially the downtown B3 zone, for citing such a facility. It's not about any specific site. And secondly, you did get a letter I placed on your dais tonight, late in the afternoon today, from Sandra Kramer, who generally is opposed to citing such a clinic in the downtown. Also, John Burkadall from THS is here tonight, as well as one of his associates. So if you have questions about the operation of the current clinic or any information about other locations where they do have the opiate substitution treatment clinic facilities. And so with that, unless you have questions for me, I'm done.
Great, thank you. Any questions of staff before we open up for public testimony? Commissioner Larber?
Only, are we approving this amendment tonight or just still discussing it?
My recommendation is that, in fact, we did not even provide a resolution in your packet, because our recommendation is that you not take any action tonight other than to continue the discussion and take testimony and just learn more about what people have to say, what's on people's minds tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, I had several people that signed up for the public hearing tonight. So I'll just go through the list here, and if you can come up and state your name and address for the record, that would be great. I think it's, is it Cammie Anderson?
Hello, my name's Cammie Hart Anderson, and I'm a division manager with Snohomish County Human Services just across the street here at 3000 Rockefeller. And I wanted to speak tonight in support of the need for additional treatment services within Snohomish County as a whole. We're fortunate that Evergreen Recovery Centers will be opening our second detox program in the city of Linwood next month. And so a project takes a significant amount of time. We've been working on that for just over 7 years to get programs cited. In regards to opioids, there's many indications that Snohomish County is in desperate need of additional treatment resources, particularly medication-assisted treatment, which includes the methadone, Suboxone, and Vivitrol, the three primary drugs used to help treat opioid addiction. At any given time, we have 50 to 60 inmates detoxing from heroin in our jail. We've been contacted by the senior centers to come out and do trainings in relation to opioids, and for my staff to do training on administering Narcan, because opioids is now the primary drug of abuse among our senior citizens. We exchanged, as citizens of Snohomish County, 1.7 million needles at the needle exchange that Jeff mentioned earlier. 1.7 needles were exchanged in 2016. In our current one public detox program that has 16 beds for a county with 750,000 residents, the primary drug of choice has been and continues to be for the last 3 years heroin. 75% of the people coming into detox report heroin as their primary drug of choice. And what's interesting, over the last 9-month period, the second drug is meth, is now rising. We'd seen a decrease in meth, but now that's continuing to rise, while at the same time, the utilization of heroin is continuing at high rates. Snohomish County is second in heroin overdose deaths per capita than the other counties. Clallam County is the only one ahead of us. And I'm assuming most of you have heard about fentanyl, the medication that is the drug that is approximately 50 times stronger than heroin. We are second in the number of fentanyl deaths in 2016, according to a report that the State Department of Health just released a bit ago. Additionally, Snohomish County Human Services has contracted with Therapeutic Health Services for over 12 years now. And I just want to mention that Therapeutic Health Services has always been a strong partner. They are responsive and they are responsible. And we are in regular contact with South County Precinct, the Everett South County Precinct, in regards to activity around their clinic that's located just north of Everett Mallway on Everett Greenway. And to date, law enforcement, Everett PD has reported that they've had no incidents in that area. So I'm here tonight just to mention and educate regarding the need for increased treatment resources in our county, and we'd appreciate anything that you can do to help us with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The next one I have is Mary Dean, is that correct? Again, please state your name and address for the record, thank you.
Mary Dean, 3222 Grand Avenue, a block and a half for one of the proposed sites. And my response on Sunday morning, reading the article, was, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's okay in my neighborhood. And part of the issue, I mean, in all that's been said so far, I strongly agree with. But the other thing that is so tied to providing easy access to treatment facilities is that our homelessness issue is also very closely tied to this. And as I was reading the article in the paper on Sunday, I remembered a KUOW conversation that went on talking about profiling folks that were living in the jungle and people who were trying to get to methadone clinics that had been moved out of Lake City and put down in a not very desirable area because people didn't want it in their neighborhood. And the consequence is that people who were getting methadone were also trying to hold down a job, and it was becoming absolutely impossible for them, and their only choice for living situations was to move into the jungle, even though they had a job, because they needed to get to the methadone clinic at 5:30 in the morning. And I know this sounds a little bit like a big issue here, but as we're planning for facilities in this city, we need to make sure that they're easily accessible, they're on good bus lines, they're at a place where people can have access to food and water and all the resources so that folks going to the treatment facilities are able to get to their jobs, have adequate transportation, and eventually come back to being productive members of our society. And I really hope that we are talking on one path here, and that is to really make a difference and not say, yes, we have a big, huge problem here, but also not to say, not in my neighborhood, and let's put it someplace where nobody can see it. This is a community problem, and we need to, as a community, come together to solve the problem. So thank you for your consideration. And I hope we don't have to take a lot of time to study it. I think we know we have the problem. We just need to start implementing the solutions. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dean.
Yeah.
Jim Dean?
Hi, my name's Jim Dean, and I also live at 3222 Grand Avenue, several blocks away from here. I'm moving into becoming the executive director of the Interfaith Family Shelter here in Everett. And one of the things that's happening right along with my entrance into that job is a change in the state and the federal laws on homeless shelters. Emergency shelters now to get federal money, have to become low barrier shelters. Well, that means that we have to open up the doors to all people, and we can't check them to see if they use drugs or have any kind of drug effect. What this means really is the issue is time. It's time. We don't have time to wait. And so the message I want to say here is, I heard in the conversation and the presentation, started to give us 90 days, then I heard 6 months in that process to study it. What I'm expecting to have happen is that we'll spend another year, because we've already spent a year, remember, doing this. This is not the first conversation on this. So what I need to tell you is that come July 1st, that issue is really important to have. People walking into a shelter without us being able to even find out what their drug use is, and having to allow them to be, in the shelter around kids, because ours is a family shelter. That's the part where we want to see. Now, someone in there who's in a methadone program taking methadone is a whole different kind of person than someone who's actively using heroin. And so that's the kind of issue that I think we need to really talk about as an organization and as well as a city, to make sure that we're making that opportunity present there. Even if we open up the doors of a second methadone clinic or a second substance help clinic, we're still not going to meet the needs that we have right now in our area. It's still going to have more people, waiting in line than we're going to have to fill in the door. So the longer we wait, the longer we put it off, the longer we're going to have to worry about people on the streets. And as you heard, the issues don't come with the methadone. The issues come with drug users who are actively drug users. They're the ones that break into our cars and into our houses. They're the ones that steal from our families. It's that kind of stuff. It's not the ones who are really seeking help and have been through a good program. And so I want to thank you, but I want to urge you, haste. It's really important.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Next, we have Guy Godwallen? Okay.
My name's Guy Cadwallader. I live at 1822 Smoky Point Boulevard in Arlington. The gentleman was correct that there are really only 2 clinics that get used for substitution. But the real issue is, how do they get started? No one's even talked about all the people that get addicted from prescription drugs first, and then when the doctor cuts them off, they end up out on the street. So they don't just start out homeless. Somebody just doesn't wake up and stick a needle in their arm one day. They go to the dentist, they get some Percocets or some Vicodin for the pain, and they keep getting more. Then they go back to the doctor because their shoulder hurts, and they get some more. Then pretty soon they get a stronger prescription. Now, I work in a facility that's the largest one in the state, and opiates aren't going to stop if we keep waiting. The people that are the most successful use this medicated assisted detox program. They don't get to stay on it forever. They're on a taper. They get jobs. They go back to school. They get their kids back. And they become successful citizens. And we need to recognize that that's what those programs provide us. And if we wait another year, the addiction problem, the homeless problem, it's going to grow exponentially. I've just watched it. I've lived in Snohomish County my whole life. So thanks.
Thank you. Bob Jackson?
Hi, I'm Bob Jackson at 717 33rd Street in the Port Gardner neighborhood. And 14 years ago, Therapeutic Health Services wanted to start a clinic similar to this on Grand Avenue at Wall Street. It was put off with a moratorium. We had a neighborhood meeting. I was embarrassed the way Mr. Johnson was treated in that meeting. You all know what's happened since then. It's only gotten exponentially worse, and I hope that you will allow the zoning change so that we can site a clinic in downtown Everett if that's the wish of Therapeutic Health Services. I mean, let's make it as easy as we can for the people that are going to use that clinic. I've seen these clinics work. They're not just for people that are in the homeless camps. They might be responsible people like you and me, and I've seen it in my own personal life. People get out of those clinics clean, they hold down jobs, they pay taxes, and they contribute. I kind of agree with the letter that the Downtown Everett Association wrote. Maybe we did make a mistake by not publicizing the low barrier housing a little better in the Glacier neighborhood, but let's not put this off forever. I think the need has been demonstrated, and if they think that the site that they're looking for in downtown Everett works for them, and it's not going to impact any more than the downtown people that shop and dine, any more than the surgical center impacted people. So I agree. I mean, listen to Alan, put it off for a little while, but come back and make a good choice. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Craig Scotto?
My name is Craig Scottdahl. I'm president of the Downtown Everett Association. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and I appreciate your service on the Planning Commission. We have submitted a letter into the record requesting that you take no action for at least 90 days on the proposed zoning change. The purpose of the extra time is to provide an in-depth review that will include the following: the perceived versus actual impacts of methadone clinics to nearby businesses and residents, the location and dispersion of such clinics in Everett and Snohomish County relative to demand and access, the existing and future role of downtown in providing community services. As we have seen with the city's recent experience with citing low-barrier housing on Evergreen Way, even when you're pursuing the right solution with the best of intentions, the process matters. Unfortunately, residents in the Pinehurst neighborhood were surprised by the sudden change of zoning. The lack of community involvement in the decision created strong opposition and resistance. People who should have been working together wound up fighting each other. We want to avoid making the same mistake. At this point, the Downtown Everett Association has not taken a position on the proposed zoning change because we and our stakeholders have more questions than answers about the impacts of a second methadone clinic. If a viable case can be made for why the clinic needs to be sited downtown versus other locations, and we can develop a plan for mitigating impacts, I can see us working together with the city to do the necessary outreach required to bring people on board. At the same time, our stakeholders are rightly concerned about downtown Everett being used as a default location for providing services. The Central Business District is home to Catholic Community Services, Sunrise Services, the Salvation Army, Volunteers of America, Compass Mental Health, Housing Hope, Evergreen Recovery Centers, and several faith-based meal programs. Catholic Community Services operates an existing drug addiction treatment center on the 2600 block of Wetmore Avenue. Additionally, the Carnegie Library building on the county campus will soon be renovated to provide transitional housing and social services for homeless people being released from the jail. The challenges of addiction, mental health, and homelessness are community problems, and they require community-based solutions. Other cities in Snohomish County also need to step up and provide services where they are needed. We think part of the Metro Plan needs to address the questions as to where and how services will be located in Everett's urban center. If we want to encourage people to live, work, and play in the heart of the city, the conditions on the street need to support that. There needs to be a balance between providing services and creating opportunities for commercial, retail, and residential growth. It's important to remember that the tax revenues from future growth will be critical for funding much-needed services throughout our community. In closing, we encourage you to take a little more time to do the necessary review and outreach on the proposed zoning change. If this is truly the right decision for Everett and Snohomish County, it's important that we bring the community along as informed partners instead of adversaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scotto. Christy McBride?
Hi, I'm Christy McBride. The address is 3021 Rucker Avenue. I just opened up a coffee shop. I've never been to any kind of meeting like this, so I'm really nervous. But I have been involved. My husband and I are ministry leaders for Celebrate Recovery in Arlington for the last 3 years. We are well aware of the issues. And now just opening a business right in downtown Everett, I'm well aware of the problem with the needles every time I walk in my back door. So the idea of a methadone clinic, to me, is a good idea. I would rather have a methadone clinic right next door than needles on my back step every single day. So that's all I really can say.
Thank you very much. Well, those are all the folks I had signed up to address the Planning Commission on this issue. Is there anyone else that would like to please come forward and state your name and address for the record?
My name's Tony Antonison, 1805 Oaks Avenue. I'm a retired Naval Chief Petty Officer. I've gone through and been a resident of Everett since 2005. As you can imagine, I've been based at Naval Station Everett. That includes both the carriers over there, Lincoln and the Nimitz, until you decide to move away. If you notice, the Nimitz not scheduled to come back here until at least 19. Those decisions are made by naval leadership based on a number of factors. Allow me to give you a small heads up as to what they tell us as senior leadership. Every time a carrier comes back from a deployment, the Washington State Patrol and the Everett PD send out officers to the ship, wherever it's at. So on our transit on the way back, they give us a briefing on all the up-and-coming issues in the area. Where to keep our junior sailors away from. What parts of town? What's the drug activity? How about the gangs? What bars should we keep them away from? Any particular streets? I got this briefing 6 times. There were some improvements every time. All of those improvements that I noticed and what made my decision on where I wanted to retire were all in North Everett. I currently live less than half a mile as the crow flies from Naval Station Everett, 2 blocks off Broadway. You can check with the police department. My vehicle has been broken into 4 times in the last 3 years. Every time, the last time they actually caught the individual, she cut a deal. They didn't get her on the drug charge, they decided to go through and get her on the identity theft. And now you're considering going through and allowing something else that, regardless of good intention, which I'm not going to even go through and deny that it might be required, but the area in question is starting to recover. I've been here 12 years. I've seen the strides that North Everett has taken. The places that have been torn down, rebuilt, reestablished, cleaned up. I've seen it before the crash, and I've seen it after it. It's starting to recover, and it's actually moving in positive directions therein. Look at the new developments that are being announced down there at the waterfront. You honestly think that that kind of money and these type of residents are going to go through and stay when you have, I'm not even stating a fact, the potential. You see, with these type of issues, as everybody in this room notices, facts speak one thing, but the imagination is enough to go through and do it. Who's going to buy a house, legitimately speaking, in an area that has the potential for a higher crime rate? I didn't say it would, potential. And that is enough to affect us. We are seeing the bleed-over effect from the Seattle housing shortage right now, and it's on our benefit. I saw what went through and happened percentage-wise when you went through and announced the low-barrier housing over there off Evergreen Way. They're not going to recover for another 4 years. If you even consider this, you're going to affect North Everett for at least the next decade. And that is something which affects tax base for the entire city. What would you ever have? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that'd like to address the Planning Commission on this? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close? Oh, I'm sorry. Please come on up and state your name and address for the record.
Hey there, my name is Sierra Zweig, 3516 Lombard Avenue. I'm also really nervous. I appreciate the part of the puzzle around deciding how Everett is going to offer wraparound services to people. And I do work at the YWCA, so in partnership with some of the folks who have already spoken, and probably some people who are here who won't speak or haven't spoken yet. For the people that I serve and work with, mostly addicts, mostly in recovery, actually everyone in recovery, every single person that I work with is in recovery. Where they are in it and how they're doing with it varies along the way. But what I would like to impart on you is the great, how important stability is in encouraging recovery to take hold in sustainable ways. So the idea, so the people that I work with who have to travel by bus with kids before jobs, before school, before other appointments, after other appointments, the consolidation of services, at least in some areas, will make success rates higher and will make recovery take hold sooner, will make relapses farther between and less costly, personally costly, financially costly, costly to the families, costly to the community, costly to the tax base. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay, please come on up. State your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, Alan Miller, 723 Laurel Drive. I did an editorial here a few weeks back. I really feel that in order to get people into the clinic and move them on, the best thing to do is to partnership it with Snohomish County. They're remodeling the courthouse, and either within the building they're remodeling or across the street. And people come in, get their doses, and they get out. What I see today is over here on Everett Avenue and Rockefeller. There's a church there that is allowing 50 to 100 kids food and a place to sleep for the night. And 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, they just kind of gather outside. I don't think they have a direction at all, and they just kind of hang around the neighborhood. And I have a feeling that the same is going to happen if if we put a methadone clinic in an area where it isn't policed, and the police are right across from the county, and I think they would be a great partnership and make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the Planning Commission on this? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Lark?
Yes.
Commissioner Lavra?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordison?
Yes.
Commissioner Tisdale?
Yes.
Chair Holland?
So any questions of staff or discussion from the commissioners?
I have one.
Good. Commissioner Dunn?
So, Alan, it occurred to me that businesses have a representative or representation with the Downtown Business Association, and then the neighborhoods in Central and South Everett don't have equal representation in the city. They have no one to report to, no one to address concerns with. And so as a result, we have a conflict with the low barrier housing. So without direct equal representation, there needs to be a process to move forward. So you recommended looking at the role within the Metro plan, which still focuses on downtown. And then also if we look at the Streets Initiative, that's still also focused on the downtown corridor. So I'm wondering if it would be possible to consider this process as an essential public facility within the Everett Comprehensive Plan, which provides a process for public input, service concentration, siting, zoning, and those types of considerations. So do you think that would be possible to look at this as an essential public facility?
Are you asking about the opiate substitution treatment facility as an essential public facility?
Yes.
It may be possible. That's something that we could explore.
Okay, so maybe add it to the list of options for city and staff, because I think that especially the public process is important to have moving forward. And then I looked at crime statistics on what the police uses for their crime data, and I didn't see any type of concentration, but I wonder if that would be possible for education moving forward, is having some kind of education on crime concentrations in the South Everett facility, or any types of increase since the facility was put in.
Yeah, and that would be something that, as part of the review that Downtown Everett Association has requested, I believe would probably be very important data to examine to the extent that it exists.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think pretty much the Planning Commission knows how I feel about it. I forwarded an article last week to Planning Commission and to some of the city staff, and the story was about a lady who, I think she lived in Silver Lake, and her husband died, and she lost her house, tried to make ends meet with odd jobs, waitress jobs, cleaning houses. She had a daughter, teenage daughter. Long story short, the daughter was on heroin and died of an overdose. And this is right here in Everett. And, you know, I have a teenage daughter of my own. And the problem that I have with waiting 90 days, 6 months, a year, is that people could literally be dying as we speak. And, you know, I've heard of, you know, these people, you know, there's someone's child, there's someone's mother, there are veterans, there are people, professionals, people who get caught up in this thing for whatever reason, and they're not all homeless people. A lot of them do become homeless, but you know, you can't shame somebody into having compassion or having humanity, but you know, if we've stepped onto somebody's kingdom, I apologize, you know, we don't have an aristocracy here, but I think that the Downtown Everett Association is disproportionately represented. I think it's a relatively small group of people. I don't know that they necessarily represent the broader public at large. I've heard much more compelling reasons tonight to make haste rather than to wait and delay. I think this thing's been delayed for a year, and personally I'm infuriated at the prospect of waiting another 90 days. But if it helps, I don't really, you know, all I want to see is I want to see something done, and the whole idea that, well, how come we have two of them in Everett when, you know, Marysville doesn't have any, or Snohomish doesn't have any. I just I can't even relate to that. Because, like I said, there are people who are getting caught up in this thing, and families are being destroyed, lives are being lost. So I tried to tell myself I was not going to get melodramatic about this, but I don't have, all I can say is whatever we do, I hope we do something, to make something happen and to make something change. I think I looked at the amendment that you crafted. I thought it was masterfully done. I think you got it right. The only thing we need to do is to put it into law. And when the DEA stepped in, yeah, okay, they want to touch it up and get their fingerprints all over it. Okay, fine, if that's what it takes, that's the way I feel about it. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Commissioner Lark?
Out of curiosity, I don't know exactly who, whether it's planning staff or other city staff or Snohomish County staff to direct this question to, but I'm very curious about kind of because one thing that's fundamental that we've heard here tonight is haste, haste, haste. These problems need to be addressed before they grow worse, and we need to, do something to help people who are in, dire straits. So out of curiosity, I'm kind of curious, given the options before us, what are viable timelines for us finding a location or us coming to a point where we're put together as a more broader stakeholder coalition to find a site? What is the timeline for when we can kind of expect to see a place sited? And I'd be very interested to see some information on that, because that would factor into my decisions.
Alan Giffen, Planning Director. The timing that it would take, I guess, depends upon the extent to which we want to address all of the points that have been brought up tonight and through Downtown Everett Association's letter. So, for example, if we want to examine the role of social services within the downtown core, that's a longer process than considering a code amendment and doing some more outreach and fact-finding. I think without the broader review of social service issues in downtown, that might be a 90-day process that we could bring something back to the Planning Commission. But I think that also the process that Hill Kamen just spoke about a little bit earlier is also important. And so what I'd like to do is take this back to staff and administration and see what kind of time frame we can work out for all of these things that are important in addressing the issue and bringing some kind of code amendment back. If we were to roll it into the essential public facility type process as suggested or inquired by Commissioner Dunn, that could also take a bit more time as well. So that just depends, again, the approach that we take and how much we want to bite off. If you're looking for a simple decision on the location to allow a second clinic, then I think we might be able to do that sooner, but I do need to have more feedback from Hill and community partners such as the Health District and Snohomish County.
So Alan, just to, because we have a much broader audience here than we did last time when we discussed this, and the code amendment before us was for the Broadway corridor, which I think everybody was comfortable with, although the proposed user can't find a facility in that zone. So even pushing that code amendment forward to allow it in the Broadway corridor north of 24th isn't going to speed up a process to where a facility is actually going to open to address this problem. So I just wanted to put that on there. And the other discussion that we had was to maybe come up with some type of a hearing examiner process with a set of criteria as to why can't you locate within the zone that it's allowed in, and if so, then maybe you're allowed to go to a different area based on a whole set of factors and criteria and mitigating measures. So, and again, I realize we're on a delay here. I just don't think just jumping into allowing it in that B1 zone is going to get us a facility any faster. So,
Alan, what is the amendments that you've been noodling on and your staff's been noodling on? Would it be one additional facility? Or if we open this up someplace, would that then allow more than one facility? And I know they're governed by the state and all that stuff, but as far as our zoning,
Yeah, what we've been talking about is just one additional facility. Currently, only one is allowed, so this would allow a second.
and I don't want to delay this. I'm not a delay guy. I'm a hurry up and get it done guy. But as one gentleman spoke that, is from the North Everett area, I work in economic development every day, and we have a perception. And I think what he brought out is that perception. I actually rent one of my buildings to the Needle Exchange, and you would have thought that I committed a sin by signing the lease. Now, the other tenants that are in that building, they love them. So some of the myths that are out there, but it's in the right spot. It's nobody knows it's there, and they do their business, and the people come and go, and it all works out well. But I don't even, we heard from Hal and the health district that, we don't want to move too fast and make the wrong decision. Sometimes these big things going on. So I would be excited to see your staff and the administration say, let's put this on the top of the list and let's get it done. Whatever that means. I'm not
I
speaking
can
in
take that
favor
back.
of one area or the other. It's
Thank you.
it's a big decision.
Mr. George?
I think it's a no-brainer, from my point of view. People need help. If it was your son or daughter, I don't think there'd be anything to think about, It's just, I've just heard too many stories. There's just too many dead teenagers, I don't want to hear them anymore, and if there was anything in the world that I could do to fight that, that's what I'm going to do. So I think that, what I said in the last meeting was there's a level of urgency, and we've got to do something, and comfort levels aren't, I don't think you're ever going to get a unanimous comfort level about this. Just not going to happen. Certainly not in the city of Everett. So I think I've said, that's the point that I need. I think that we can't just keep finding excuses to not let it come about. So, it's easy to kind of keep talking ourselves out of it, and I don't know. I can't. I'm beside myself, to say any more about it.
Alan, is it possible for the meeting on the 18th to have some kind of a schedule put together so we have a kind of a direct, plan of attack, I guess, on this proposed code amendment?
Yes, however, I am out of town that week, but I can have somebody else possibly report to the commission.
Okay. Is the commission comfortable with that, coming up with a
Could we be
schedule?
ready to vote on the 18th?
I don't think that was the intent, but I'll let Alan address that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Again, I'll have to take this back with administration and other staff members, and we can provide more information between now and the 18th. Whether or not we'll have a recommendation or have it queued up for action, I can't say right now.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking more of it, when we're talking about outreach and things like that, maybe there'd be a schedule for, different meetings and things like that. We can have those discussions and then have a date that the amendment would actually come back to the
So-
commission for formal action, but what do the commissioners think about that?
So just for clarification on my point, that would be the July 18th meeting would more or less have a list of the outreach that we want to do to the community, the dates, the hit times for that, and that would be on the agenda, and we'd be discussing that as well.
That was my thought. Now, it's up to staff, I guess,
yeah,
to be able to put that together. That's why I was asking, so.
Yeah, I don't want to commit to any specific course of action for the 18th. I know that the 18th is open and available, except I will not be here. August 1st would be the next commission meeting after that. But what I'd like to do is just follow up with administration and other city staff and some community partners, and then get back to the commission at the earliest opportunity.
Would that be before the 18th, though?
Yes.
Okay.
I can certainly provide you more information before the 18th.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Alan, you've moved mountains already.
Yes.
So I have nothing but confidence that you'll come back with something.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions of staff?
Good.
No.
Okay.
Not right now.
Commissioner Tisdale, go ahead.
I would just say, none of my comments, or I don't think the staff's, or the commission, this is not one of those places where we're trying to put speed bumps up and slow something down and kick the can down the road. I think I have as much, and others have as much compassion for this as you do, Rick. It's just, it's a big thing. And it could help downtown and/or North Broadway or South Everett move in the right direction, or it could cause it to move in the wrong. That's all I want to make sure that we cite it in a correct location.
And in a timely manner.
Is that it? Okay. Is there any other business tonight, Alan?
No, nothing else from staff.
Okay. Well, I guess we're adjourned for this evening. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight.